these people, and they just did not understand. Oh, well, you know how Muslim men are, and blah 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 blah, and just all the stereotypes, you know. And I remember once at a dinner at my grandparents' house, my aunt just said something just terribly, stereotypical about, oh, well, Arab men treat their women like second-class citizens and this and that, and I'm just like, I just didn't see that, you know. I knew how, the female, I didn't interact with the women of their family very much because they weren't here going to school. I mean, they did have like cousins here and there, but I didn't see that. I didn't see them being, if anything, I saw them being more respectful, the way that they would just, help me and help my friends, and, talking to us, just nice, not being lewd and saying rude comments and flirting, and that kind of stuff just didn't happen. So I didn't see that in my interaction with them the way that people were telling me, based on their stereotypes about them. So, again, it started with just knowing them, and then, defending Islam, defending Muslims, and then later, probably about a year and a half later, I read the book by Ahmed Deedat called Islam versus Christianity. Because at that point, I can understand why there's one God. I can understand, from a logical standpoint, why God is not like the things that he created, because he's the creator, right? And so those things made perfect sense to me. And I could also understand that, that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a prophet. I didn't see any evidence to the contrary. And I could understand why, in my mind, there were just some contradictions and fallacies in Christianity that I, living in a Christian household, saw from a very young age. So, but I still never thought that I would be a Muslim. I just was like...
Why did you never think you'd be a Muslim?
Because it just never crossed my mind. I never, at that time, I was like, well, I could see that Islam was great. I could see that, all these good characteristics that my friends had was because of Islam. I recognized that. But at the time, I just never thought that it was going to be necessarily for me. I mean, you have to think about in this way that I never considered myself a Christian. I would never tell people I'm a Christian. So the idea of telling people that I was a Muslim, I never identified myself that way. I identified myself as an American or whatever. I mean, just never, with a religious identity. So after reading, I read that that book is in 2 volumes. So I was reading the first volume, and granted, Ahmed Deedat, may God have mercy on his soul, he was writing this more towards the Muslims in South Africa at the time who were being sort of duped into learning about Christianity by the missionaries. He wasn't really directing it towards non-Muslims. I mean, his whole dawah stuff was more towards, when the missionaries come knocking on your door and they tell you, oh, come to this, lecture about Allah. That's not what they were doing, this like kind of dubious things, right, at the time. Yes. This is like in the 70s, 80s. So his book is very like matter of fact, it's not like a bed of roses and it's all flowery. It's just kind of like, well, this is, laying it out very directly. And, a lot of what he was writing about, he was quoting the Bible. And so me, as this kind of cynical person that I am, and I don't take everything, like my dad would say, hook, line, and sinker. I'm going to look into it myself. If someone tells me something, I'm not just going to believe them. That's just not my personality. So I bought a Bible, and I thought, well, maybe he's quoting things out of context. So I had my Bible, and I opened it up, and I would look, and I'd read, and I'm like, wait, he's not. Wait a second. So after reading the first volume and checking all the quotes that he used to see that he wasn't, misrepresenting them or, lying about what was really there, because I'd never really read the Bible. When you go to church, there's not a focus on that. At least not when I was going to church. I mean, maybe it depends on, kind of church you go to, obviously, but, we went to church and we sang some songs, and depends on, the Protestant one, you sing more songs than the Catholic one. You have peace be upon you. Oh, peace be upon you too. I mean, there's some of that in the Catholic Church, but so, reading, I never really read the Bible. So reading it, there were just things that just really astonished me, I guess I would say, that some things that you grew up in the church believing that it seems that the Bible tells you the exact opposite. So did those things just really, I can't believe in this book. There's something awry here. So after I finished the first volume, I tried to ignore it. I really did. I just tried to ignore it. Like, Islam cannot be the right religion. I just, like, okay, fine, it works for some people, but...
But it was in your mind that maybe I have to...
There's something, I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt sort of this pulling, like my heart and psychologically, but it's like everything in my world was telling, everything in my world, my society, is saying that Islam is not right. That, it just is so against like what you grow up believing and thinking is the truth. Just in general, let alone the religious stuff. There's just, I don't know, it's so hard to explain now. I mean, especially looking back, that I was like, no, this can't be the truth. I can't be a Muslim. No. And then it's like continually just coming up. Well, maybe it is the truth.
So you said the book that you read by Ahmed Deedat, Islam
versus Christianity, right?
So you said
The Choice.
The Choice. So you said after you finished reading the first volume, you started to think some things.
I started thinking a lot more about Islam as the correct religion and the truth, and that I needed to become a Muslim. Before, I just thought it's interesting and it's not what people think it is, and and so I made this kind of transition from that to maybe Islam is like the right religion for me. And so I just sort of, had an epiphany, I guess, after reading the book, and then, comparing against the Bible and all the things that, because I was a cynic, right? So I had to like look at what everything he was saying. And anytime I had a question, I also asked my friends, right? Is this, what does this mean? Or, if it was a hadith or something, ask them about that. So I just had this overwhelming feeling of wanting to be a Muslim, that I had to be a Muslim. Like, it wasn't a choice at that point. It was like, I just have to be a Muslim. Like, it's the truth. So I asked one of my friends, how do you become a Muslim? And he said, you say the Shahada. And I was like, well, what's that? He's like, you just say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. I was like, okay, I want to be a Muslim. He's like, what? I think he was just more shocked than I was. So he walked me through the Shahada, and then it was just kind of a slow transition. I mean, they didn't pressure me, like, okay, you got to stop doing this, and you need to, because right at that time it was Ramadan, and I didn't know anything about Ramadan, so I just sort of...
But now up to that point, none of them had ever pressured you to become Muslim.
No.
You came to them and said to them, I want to take the Shahada.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, and only a couple of them knew for like almost maybe 6 months before we told the rest of my friends that were also Muslim. Because they were like, just wait to tell your parents, because I felt very sort of like scared, and I was scared how society was going to feel about me now. Especially my family. Like, what are they going to think about my decision? They're going to think I'm crazy, right? And like I said before, that I never identified myself with a religion. I never said I'm a Christian. That was never something that I would say. And talking about God, just saying the word, just that was like the feelings that I had before. It just was uncomfortable. So to go from that, I mean, I felt like I was like very spiritual and like I believed in God, but to put a religious, like a name to it, like calling yourself a Christian or a Muslim, that just wasn't how I identified myself. So to now say, Michaela Corning is a Muslim, it was hard enough for me to say. So now I have to say that to the world, kind of. So I had to like kind of come to terms with it on my own. So for probably a good, 6 months, it was just, a few of us knew about it. Me and a couple of my friends, and then I contacted Tayuba, my childhood friend's mom, and I told her I became a Muslim, and she just was like, Subhanallah, little Michaela, just was, shocked. And so she's like, well, why don't you write it down on paper? She's like, have you told your parents? Because she knew my parents, right? I was like, no, I haven't told my parents yet.